Okay, it's time to show another little piece of my guitar collection. This one is kind of special. They are all special to me in some certain way, but this is one that really means something somewhat to me. You can see the box that it came in here. Some of you are probably guessing what this is, and it may not quite be exactly the variation that you're thinking of. Pulled out this case here, and yeah, I've already cheated and opened it up. Took a look at it. One thing about this is that whenever I was younger, this seemed to be the one. This was the guitar that made the difference. They had a Eddie Van Halen, which you can tell this is associated with. He had first had a black and white striped guitar that looks remarkably like this. And a lot of people don't know what happened to that guitar or realize that that actually turned into the red, white, and black guitar on later albums until 5150 ages and the Sammy Hagar age, and then it became something different, and then he started using Kramer guitars, which had a neck very similar to this one on it, but it was pretty much the same thing. In fact, this one that I have here in the box at first used to have a regular neck on it like it does that I have in the box, but then even on Van Halen 2 you can see a headstock on it that's like this but rounded off like the one that's here, painted black with a Charvel emblem on it. But the actual album didn't have any work on it that was from that guitar, actually. And in truth, the very first album was actually made on a Gibson Explorer, an ES 335, and a couple of other guitars, and that black and white one, which he had to quite often tune up. It did not have the Floyd Rose tailpiece that's on it that you see here, which allowed you to stay in tune. And then, of course, the addition of the locking headpiece that's shown here, and that was allowing him to have a constantly locked fretboard here and the strings that are on it, and it didn't go out of tune. So this is actually the second iteration of this thing, because the very first Floyd Rose that was on it is the one that they show on this $12,000 variation of this guitar they only made 50 of. And it's pretty much the same thing. You can tell this one here has been sandblasted, but it's been painted. The original one is like a sandblasted metal like this, but not painted. Or not, I wouldn't say the original. The very first one they did wasn't plated in any way, and they wanted to mock that in the one that was released that cost so much of a variation. And of course, it's totally aged. It has specks and chips and ground marks on it and stuff. I wanted one that was pretty much pristine, like Eddie had it right when he set it up to be the exact one, and go from there. Sure, it may become aged over time, but it won't come to me pre-scuffed up or dragged down a road. This has the actual volume knob on it from the variation of guitar it comes from, as opposed to the black and white one, which is getting sent to me. It was supposed to be in the case candy, along with the picks that are shown there, and a Van Halen 2 tour shirt that comes with it. It's not actually from then, but it's a recreation of which. But I never wanted to have anything, guys, that was like a gimmick guitar. Of course, you can look at a lot of them that way. Whenever you look at my Les Paul that I have that's a 59 reissue, you can say, oh, that's a gimmick of Jimmy Page. No, it's not, because that same guitar, depending on slight flavor variations of way that sunburst turned into, can either be Billy Gibson's Pearly Gates, or that, or the Greenie Les Paul that we all know about that went through a few hands and is now in Kirk Hammett's, or so on like that. So it could be a lot of different things. But then, you know, something like Randy Rhoads was really my hero, and of course that's probably from the same idea of Kurt Cobain, where he died in his peak somewhat, and it made him somewhat of a martyr. But I would never get a polka dot flying V. I played on V's, and I played on one just like that, and I didn't really like it very much. The Concorde version, his specialty version, was very nice and different too, but I would not probably get one of those too. It would be one of a gimmick type things. And listen, if I was, I would never play this thing out at a gig or anything unless, you know, it was a keg party type thing or whatever, and I was going to play a couple of Van Halen songs. I might whip this thing out. Other than that, I would probably play most of the songs on this that have a vibrato on it. And really, about half the songs in the old days don't have any vibrato on them at all. And I would have used something else, like an Explorer, which I'm fixing to show you a very nice Explorer too in a coming few days here, and then another guitar also, and that'll be pretty much the showing of my full collection. But I thought I would share this with you. Here, a very nice case, form fit for it and everything, made for it itself. There's no marking on the headstock. This is exactly like Eddie's was, no markings on it or whatever. Got a serial number on the back of it, and I ended up luckily with a 79 at the end of it, where this was the year that that happened in. So that's another thing that's fantastic about it. But real neat here to end up being able to get a guitar like this. This is, again, a show type of guitar, something that you would just keep on the side and, you know, not really be the player's guitar or whatever, although I'm about to make a few videos on it, and I'll play a couple of old hits from around the same albums, 1 and 2 and so on, and play some of this. I can play some Van Halen from all of the albums, basically, but we'll work through that eventually. I don't want this to become a guitar channel in any way, of course, shape or form, but I just thought I'd share some other things that I have going on rather than studies and so on, and all the things that have to do with it, some of my hobbies and things that went along with it. I haven't really gone deep into the fish studies and things like that, but I think I might do a few videos about that too. Of course, like I've always said, this channel isn't about me, but it's about its information, and you know, something like this has to be shared eventually. You know, my channel has a lot of information that's about me and things that I've learned in my whole life and stuff, and guitar playing has definitely been a big part of it. I talk about often in my videos how the album covers and everything and a lot of the topics are really discussing old ancient mythology and things, especially when it got to this dark metal type of thing. And with, you know, Journey album covers, Dark Side of the Moon, every one that really stood out that I actually used to have stuck up on my wall, all plastered around whenever I was a kid, with fishnets hanging up and things like that, actually had something to do with this all. Quite remarkable. And I was sitting and playing on my guitar whenever I had that revelation, and listening to a song, and something keyed off the song, and I stopped playing guitar, and I was like, what? Oh wow, that makes me think a lot of weird things. Hold on. And I looked up thinking about things, and there was an album cover with something that went along with that. And there's another one, and here's one, and oh my gosh, oh wow, oh wow. But that's for another video or 10, huh, guys? Anyhow, I just thought I'd share this with you. This is one of the more special guitars in all the world. If you had this just painted one certain color, probably be no big deal. But the fact that it's painted up just like this is one thing that's different about it, and it makes it special. There's always a difference with each one of these. I heard it's some secret rule they have with each other that one little paint stripe is off, and that way, or something about it where you can tell that this is this one, this is that one, this is this one, pretty much at a glance. On this one, there's a piece of tape missing that would actually go right in here on the original, but it's on the butt of it where you don't really notice it, and so that's supposedly the difference. Now in modern days, you'll see one here where it has a floating truss rod that's inside of here instead of built up at the end of the neck for adjustment, and that's a more modern thing too, and that's even on that $14,000 or $12,000 one that now sells for $14,000. This is like the original. This is an original neck and original body like that, although it's not a boogie body. It's one that's mocked off of it exactly, just like Pacers were and so on. And this was one that was specially cut out for them to only have one pickup. And then it's not as deep as a normal pickup reference with the ring around it where it floats. It's actually just screwed directly down to it. You'll see this guitar with a white version on that, and you'll see it again where the neck from here up is painted black and it's got a Charvel emblem on it, but that was done later too, and that was actually a different neck than this neck that he had on it. And if you'll look, he goes back to this neck, and there was a period where the neck that was actually on this ended up becoming the neck on the red, white, and black one. So it's gone through quite a bit of iterances and changes off into it, but I thought this was pretty much the most authentic, and I ended up getting the Floyd Rose that actually stays in tune versus the Project one. That $12,000 one or whatever is supposed to have a little more issues. Sure, they worked on it some, but then again, is it exact? whereas this one is exact with the next iteration he had on it, the first patent applied for type version that was going on it. But the one thing that is separate and different from that is the locking top nut that's here off of it is actually the iteration after this back iteration that's here. It's not the one that went on that, it's one that went after it, because each one of these are pyramid type shapes that pinch down with a little slight notch that's in each one, and that would have been something from the next stage on. So there's always something about each one of these. You can't get an exacting, if you'd say, but this is about as close as you could get to it. And this is the correct paint job, the correct thing, the whole 9 yards. Oh, this was also done too by hand. This is one of the ones that's done by hand. So you can even see places where there are little bitty triangles of black that are showing through there and over and there and so on. There's some small places you can see the tape line, but it's pretty much spotless as far as that aspect goes. And I figure down the years of the road, it'll age a little somewhat and kind of look like that, but I'll never put it through the hell that Eddie did. I've got a strap for this coming too, and it has the same kind of strap. The one that came with this is a little cheap one that looks like a car seatbelt cover. And that's actually what he had at first on this, where he had black and white stripes, or black and yellow stripes that are on it, and they were diagonal across it. I couldn't find one just like that. I did find one that was a police caution, stay behind, black and yellow, but that's not exactly the same thing. I thought, that goes with it real good. Of course, the one that he ended up using on this was the one that was a dog chain, and then he ended up putting the little loops that are in this bag right here on here and on the end, as opposed to a regular strap lock system or strapping system. And then at the end of his dog chain, he had the little hook that goes on a little dog collar. It attaches onto here, and at the back here, they actually just taped on an extra little piece of the strap through and put that dog collar on and stitched it onto it, put some extra tape onto it. And once it became to where they had wireless versions, that wireless version was taped onto that thing too. But of course, he changed throughout the years and did different things. But occasionally he would bring out a guitar and go back and forth. These things still went out of tune, the hell that he put them through. And so he would go a song or two and then hand off the guitar and get another one back and so on like that. And for certain songs, like when he was going to play Cathedral or something like that, they'd bring him out one that he had set up to go for it. So they already had the plan going on where he'd switch out a few guitars, sometimes going along with the age of the era that he was playing the guitar from. And people would hoot and holler when they'd see him bring out a certain guitar, knowing that they would be able to hear some of that old Van Halen, which once the new Van Halen started with Van Hagar, didn't really have that effect. I don't want to be in an argument or anybody about the ages of it, but the truth, Van Halen was always this age for me. And whenever it became Van Hagar, that version, that was fantastic. It really was, but it was a different version. It was a different machine and a different creature altogether. Sammy had his own thing. Admittedly, he sings contemporarily a lot better than David Lee Roth does, but he didn't have that David Lee Roth thing, did he? Yeah, that David Lee Roth thing is what made them into a party band that made him something different than what everybody else was. And that's what gave them their foot inside the door anyhow. And once Eddie kicked that door in and came in jamming, people really were just godsmacked. Again, I went on way too long. I thought this would be about 5 minutes maybe, but I'm also going along with this, going to release a couple of songs that I do off this once I tune this thing up. Of course, they always tune to flat, E flat, which is 432 hertz in sacred geometry, not 440. But that's for other videos too. Peace out, guys. Let me know what you think.